Welcome to the Mark Divine Show. This podcast is about more than just listening. It's about sparking action and inspiration while transforming yourself, your community, and the world at large. Each episode is designed to help you grow as a leader, break through personal barriers, and make lasting impact. Together, you and your host will explore topics like mental toughness, emotional resilience, purpose, and evolving consciousness, while embracing challenges and facing this fast-changing world. Our guests on the Mark Divine Show are exceptional individuals who offer wisdom from diverse fields, whether it's science, philosophy, leadership, human performance, or psychedelic research. Join us today as we dare to think bigger, live bolder, and unlock the common potential within everyone. Here's your host, Mark Divine.
Hi, this is Mark Divine. Welcome to the Mark Divine Show. So stoked to have you here with me today, where we dive into topics related to holistic development, integration, positive psychology, consciousness, awareness, spiritual development, and the like. Anything that really fires me up, and I hope it fires you up as well. Today, I'm excited to continue our discussion of what I call 5 Mountain Development. 5 Mountain Development is an aspect of a program that I developed called Unbeatable Mind, which develops individuals and teams holistically in an integrated manner to create vertical growth. Vertical growth means growth that changes who you are, how you think, and it sends you along a developmental path to higher states of awareness, greater perspective, more openness, more compassion, more inclusiveness, more world-centric, in other words. So as opposed to horizontal development, which just gives you new skills and maybe skills as well as knowledge that allow you to maybe be more effective at the stage that you are at already. So we're trying to unlock growth and we're trying to accelerate growth. The 5 mountains are the 5 developmental aspects or 5 domains that all humans possess. They are physical, mental, emotional, intuitional, and spiritual. I did a deep dive on the physical mountain and then recently a deep dive in a couple sessions on the mental mountain. And today we're going to talk about the third, the emotional mountain, which is kind of the linchpin where a lot of people get stuck. These are all related. The 5 mountains are co-developed. It's not like you develop one and then you move on to the other and then the other, because ultimately we're looking at reintegration, right? So the process of doing the training and developing yourself, or what we call the work, is to develop yourself across all 5 mountains simultaneously, so that ultimately the experience is one of reintegration, so that they're all experienced as one whole. And you don't distinguish or differentiate physical from mental, from emotional, from intuitional, and from spiritual. They all co-arise as one experience of wholeness. Whole mind, whole body, mind. That is really a profound shift in perspective and awareness that I hope that everyone will get to experience in their lives. But it takes work. That's why we say this is a lifetime practice, and the practice is done right here where you're at, right here now, today, one day, one lifetime. You do the work right now. So the fact that you're listening to this means that you are committed to doing the work. So super stoked to have you here for that. So quick story around my 5 mountain journey and why the emotional mountain is so important. So the physical mountain for me came easy, largely because of the physical aptitude I had God-given at birth with this body, as well as having a mother and a father who were relatively athletic, or at least active. So I grew up hiking in the Adirondack Mountains and swimming in the lakes up there. Got into competitive sports through swimming, and then soccer and tennis and those types of things. 12 varsity letters. I recruited to swim competitively at Colgate University, and then I rode crew, became a martial artist, and then a Navy SEAL. So obviously, physical mountain for me was something that was relatively not easy, but something that I could, wrap my physical brain around and discipline myself, because I could see the results both in my physiology, in my physical makeup, as well as performance. And so in our culture, which is very performance-driven and individualistic, physical training, physical mountain, and sports and athletics tend to get a high priority and a lot of money and attention. We see that obviously in our culture with NFL and these sports teams and these individuals making hundreds of millions of dollars, how that focus is there. So Physical Mountain, for a lot of people, though, who aren't super athletes, really is just about maintaining health and a relative level of fitness as appropriate for your age and your body type. And it's very important, and I address this in the discussion about the Physical Mountain. It's very important that you take that seriously, because as you learn through these podcasts and through my work and others as well, the body and the mind are not separate. They're not two different things. So if you want to have a healthy mind and you want to have healthy thinking, and then the next corollary there is healthy thinking will lead to healthy emotionality or emotional awareness. If you want to have healthy emotional awareness, then you need healthy thinking. If you want to have healthy thinking, you need a healthy body. So the body really is the foundation or the crux of all the work that we do. And this is unique because in America, at least in our culture, physical training has really been kind of divorced from emotional work or even mental work, especially spiritual work. And what my position is that it can't be, right? The physical foundation, the physical projection that you have into this world, right, as a spiritual being having a physical body is the crux. So you take care of that body through healthy activities, and I address those in terms of what we call the 6 pillars: physical fitness and movement, as learning how to move your body somatically well, exercise it, functionally, and those types of things. Then nutrition and fueling, like learning what to eat, when to eat, and why you eat. And then disciplining yourself to eat in a very, very healthy manner, right? Really close to theirs, high quality foods. And then sleep and recovery. That's the third of the 6 pillars. Learning how to sleep very well, building recovery into your fitness regimen, building recovery into your day. I spent a lot of time talking about this concept of our proclivity to bias toward action and toward doing, and to this cultural kind of training that not doing something is a waste of time or you're not being productive. And I want you to flip that script. Some of the most productive time that you will ever spend is not doing anything. Learning to recover, taking time after important meetings, taking time after exercise, taking time after strenuous work periods, and just using that time to just sit and to learn how to sit in silence and be quiet and to receive and to restore. So you have a balance between activity and doingness, as well as beingness and inactivity. And those two become the yin and the yang of your life and bring you back into balance. So those are 3 of the 6 pillars. And then the 4th is essentially stress management. So using breath control techniques such as box breathing and tactical breathing, which I went into in depth, to manage your stress and to get out of hyperarousal and to develop the capacity to control your arousal response. That is key. And also looking at your environment, removing stressors from your environment, including stressful people. The 4th is getting out in nature, like really learning to spend time in nature. I mean, I'm so grateful that I grew up in a beautiful area in upstate New York, in the Adirondack Mountains, with thousands of acres around me and all these freshwater lakes. And so I spent a lot of time outside, and I learned to just love nature. And I learned how powerful a teacher nature can be, and how powerful it is for grounding and for health and for optimism and positive mindset. All of that can come from spending time in nature. We're not separate from nature, so we want to learn to be in it and to be stewards of it and to recognize that it's part of us. So that's the 5th. And then the last is to recognize, and we're going to talk more about this later, that we're not alone. We grow and flourish in a community, right? So think of to move from an I to an us mindset, and to develop your life with communities of practitioners and communities of supporters. So those are the 6 pillars that we really dial into and develop a physical foundation that is powerful, strong, resilient, and balanced, so that the brain and the rest of your mental structures can really go to work on mental and emotional development. I'm not going to dig into the mental mountain much, but suffice it to say that it's very difficult to really separate the discussion of mental mountain training and emotional training, because they really are kind of hand in glove. Emotional work is the felt experience and the interpretation of those felt experiences, which obviously, overlaps with mental mountain training, which is developing the cognitive capacity to discern things a little bit more clearly, to eradicate biases, to reconstruct your storyline, to develop mindfulness, concentration, attention control, and to expand your notion of what the mind is beyond just the brain and its left-right hemisphere, contextual and content awareness, into heart mind and belly mind or gut mind capacities. So you get into what we call whole mind thinking. It is this whole mind thinking combined with your physical aptitude, your physical awareness, which gives you great interoception and proprioception and capacity to discern the sensations in your body that allow us to do the emotional mountain work with a lot more effectiveness. So back to my story, I had the capacity, a strong physical capacity as an athlete and growing up in the wilderness, spending a lot of time in nature. And then when I got into Zen training when I was 21, so I started to do some real mental development. And I would say that some mental development accrues through traditional education. Obviously, you're going to develop some concentration, memory skills. Obviously, reading and writing, those are going to develop some mental skills, but they're really rather limited and left brain linear skills. So we tend to really overdevelop or hyperdevelop the left brain linear rational processes, which are important, but they're just part of the story of your mind. And so that was fairly well developed in me. But then when I started meditating, doing the work of Zen, which included attention control, concentration, mindfulness, and opening up to non-dual awareness, then my whole mind started to work more effectively, both contextually, which is right hemispheric thinking, and non-linear, as well as supporting that and being able to observe the contextual or the content side of things, which is the linear left brain thinking. And so that was the first benefit of the mental development, was this opening up of contextual awareness, witnessing capacity to be able to observe the thoughts in real time and to begin to separate my identity from those thoughts. And so there was the witness, and then there was the thinker. Now that, as I described in the discussion on the mental mountain, was a transformative experience for me. And for those of you who have gone through that, you know what I'm talking about. It's very transformative to shift your identity from I am the thoughts to I observe those thoughts, but I am not those thoughts. And then you can from there go begin to explore who is that is the witness. And that leads to more spiritual development discussions. So then I also began to notice that the thinking was not always accurate, and the thinking was not always positive, and the thinking was not always thoughts that I even could equate as my own. And what I mean by that is that there were a lot of plants. There was a lot of belief systems and stories and thought patterns, which I just was, once I investigated them, I noticed that they were just flat out false or not mine, meaning I didn't really identify with them. They were planted there by my family, by, beliefs from the church and by, culture and, news and media and stuff like that. So the mental mountain development was really profound for me because it allowed me to identify storylines that weren't productive or supportive of who I was becoming, and I was able to begin to rewrite the script of those stories. This podcast is sponsored by Marley Spoon. I'm genuinely excited about Marley Spoon because they're helping me fast-track my way to eating well without all the stress and complexity. As a former SEAL, I've always been big on discipline and routine. But when it comes to meal planning and prep, I struggle. That's why I'm stoked about Marley Spoon. It's a meal delivery service that's been a game changer for me. What I love about them is that they give you over 100 recipes to choose from every week. Everything from hearty comfort food to lighter, healthier options. My recent favorite is their grilled chicken with avocado salsa. It's like a burst of flavor that fuels my training.
And get this, they just launched new 15-minute express recipes, perfect for those days when you're running from one mission to the next. Plus, they feature Martha Stewart's recipes every week. These dishes taste like they're straight out of a 5-star restaurant. I love Marley Spoon's commitment to quality. I'm always preaching about the importance of fueling your body right, and I appreciate that Marley Spoon has a registered dietitian reviewing every recipe. It's like having a nutrition expert and a chef in your kitchen. So this year, fast-track your way to eating really well with Marley Spoon. Head over to their website, marleyspoon.com, marleyspoon.com/offer/divine. Use the code DIVINE, DIVINE, for up to 27 free meals. That's right, up to 27 free meals with Marley Spoon. That's an incredible offer. marleyspoon.com/offer, OFFER, /divine, Use that with the code DIVINE to get up to 27 free meals. One last time, go to marleyspoon.com/offer/divine for up to 27 free meals. Make sure you use that code DIVINE at checkout so they know that I sent you. Thanks, Marley Spoon, for sponsoring the Mark Divine Show. Do you like to embrace the edge with your travel? What are your grand ambitions and greatest goals? Well, if you're striving for adventure, reaching higher, there's a vehicle that matches your unstoppable spirit. It's called the Defender. It's engineered to meet your challenges head on. Defender is an icon reimagined through thoroughly modern design. With legendary capability on and off the road, it's built for those who approach the impossible to make it reasonable. Step inside, you'll find robust materials and quality craftsmanship. The interior exudes confidence with its rich finishes, modern functionality, and practical solutions for storage. It's built for purpose, ensuring your adventure is in comfort no matter where you explore. The Defender is available in 3 models, 90, 110, and 130, each a little bit bigger. There's a Defender to suit everyone's needs. The 130 offers seating for up to 8, which is perfect for bringing the whole crew along on your next adventure. So if you're ready to embrace your own seemingly impossible journey and make it reasonable, then explore the Defender lineup at LandRoverUSA.com. Again, Land Rover, LandRover, USA.com. And thanks to Land Rover for sponsoring the Mark Divine Show.
So that was all powerful work, and that led me up to my 30s. And this time, I hadn't done a whole lot of emotional work. I mean, there was some emotional work that accrued from being a Navy SEAL and going through training and being held accountable at a high level. There was some emotional work as a result of some, abject failures in relationships, dealing with some of the traumas of childhood and some of the family patterns, but no real deep awareness of what was driving the emotional behaviors and patterns in my life. That work began, the emotional work, mountain work for me began when I took up therapy in my early 30s. And it's a slow process. And it's still ongoing. So that's why I say the emotional mountain is really the most challenging of all of the 5 mountains. And it has to be built upon a solid foundation of physical and mental development. It doesn't mean you need to wait, but to do emotional development without or separated from or devoid of both physical and mental work is usually very limiting and often doesn't lead to optimal results. A great example of that lack of awareness, this is a funny story, when after I got married and my wife, Sandy, is a therapist herself, I remember telling her that I had the perfect family. And I believed I had a perfect family. And in a lot of ways, they are perfect in their dysfunctions, like a lot of families. In fact, probably most. It wasn't until years later that, the work that I was doing really kind of revealed that there was a lot there that was not so perfect. And yet, all the way into my early 30s, I was trained to believe that this family I grew up in, which had a lot of alcoholism and rage and codependence, was perfect because I was baked in that system. It became what I call my background of obviousness. And so it was completely hidden from my view, which is what we call the shadow in the therapeutic terms.
Were you allowed to feel your feelings in your family system?
What's that voice? Was that in my head? So that's a great point. Catherine, no. And that's why it was an imperfect system. Like a good, healthy family system, emotions are acknowledged. You're allowed to have your own thoughts and feelings. They are applauded and encouraged. And yet there's solid boundaries, for the children so that you don't kind of stray too far off the reservation. In my family, the emotions weren't discussed. They were just expressed. You weren't necessarily allowed to have your own opinions. You were told what to think. And because of the some of the violence and other things that were going on, a lot of emotional energy got suppressed and repressed. And that's what, we'll talk about in a bit, leads to kind of broken off parts or, trauma-induced patterns that then serve you well as a kid to protect you, but don't serve you as an adult. And you got to do the work to expose those and eradicate them. So the work is important, and I'm speaking from experience. That's kind of the whole point here is I've done personally the work at a physical level. Clearly, I continue to do the work. I train every day. I continue to do the work at a mental level every day through concentration, meditation, mindfulness, awareness practices. And I continue to do the emotional work every day because it's not something that is devoid of other work. It's not something you do once a week or at a retreat. Like emotional work is a day by day, eventually it's a moment to moment. In fact, mindfulness practice really to me is mostly about emotional awareness because emotions drive our behaviors. And I think it's wrong to think of mindfulness as only a mental practice where you're just looking at your thoughts. You're actually looking at your thoughts, patterns, emotions, shadow, the whole kind of makeup of that background of obviousness, which is obvious to everybody but you. So I know a little bit of what I'm talking about. At the same time, I will admit that I'm not a trained psychologist. I'm not a trained therapist. I am a coach, and as an executive coach to top business executives and leaders and Navy SEALs, we tend to spend a lot of time on the emotional mind because that's where people get stuck. But at the same time, if someone's dealing with real deeply seated trauma issues from childhood things such as abuse or alcoholism or codependence, narcissism, shame and guilt-based traumas, then it's really important that you get some professional help. So what are emotions? Emotions are, I love the term emotions, like energy and motion. Emotions are felt experiences. They're bodily sensations or affects. So an affect is something like a mood where you can't necessarily pinpoint a sensation in the body, or it can be an actual physical sensation that you can geolocate, like in your heart or your gut or, tightness in your chest, that type of thing. So those are two things. So that a sensation, just as a sensation is just a sensation, but it becomes an emotion when you add an interpretation to the sensation. So if you feel like an upwelling in your gut, and then you might interpret that as fear or anxiety, and then you might look for the source of what's causing that or what's triggering that fear or anxiety. And often what you identify as a source isn't the true source, because the fear or anxiety might be related to some stuck energy that you've trapped when you carved out a part of yourself as a child, when you experienced something that was unloving or dangerous, seemingly dangerous. And so you kind of trap that energy. And so it might be triggering, some outside event might trigger that experience of anxiety or fear. So that would be how a sensation works. An affect is more of a mood or, I guess low-grade depression. I'm not going to say depression itself because there's a lot of ways we can talk about depression. There's physiological, psychological, and trauma-based depressions. But if you could have a mood of, let's say, apathy, which is a form of depression, that's more of an affect. It's just kind of there, it just hangs over you or hangs inside of you. And there's an interpretation around that as well. And there might be several interpretations because that affect might actually be part of what triggers other things that go on in your life that are perceived as negative or discomfort inducing, right? The affect of Apathy could trigger regret, remorse, grief, anger, those types of things, all negative emotions based upon different things that happen in your life, because underlying that affect of apathy is some sort of shame. And that shame is going to be induced or created through some childhood traumas, usually long-term period of just not being taken care of, not being loved. So there's different ways that we experience emotions. So remember I said sensations or affects that have interpretations. There's experienced in the body, but because the mind and the body are not separate, we also get the interpretation. So the mind becomes part of it, right? This is what I mean by you can't separate emotions from the body, the physical mountain, and the mind, the mental mountain, because they're all kind of interrelated or co-created. But you can have gross experiences and subtle experiences. So the gross physical body is really like your muscles, your joints, your organs, right? And so when most sensations and affects are stored in that physical or gross body, but there's also this subtle body. The subtle body is more the energetic state. And you can have energy body emotional patterns or disruptors. And this is why when you look at the Hindu or the Indian yoga tradition of the chakra systems and the six major chakras, you can actually relate them to certain emotional energies, right? So your root chakra at the base of the spine is related to feelings of security or insecurity, groundedness, that type of thing. And those are subtle body kind of emotional feelings. It's more of like just a sense of beingness, right? And then your second chakra is going to be related to your feeling of I guess, sexual maturity or immaturity, your feeling of potency and creativity as a human being, right?
Sensuality.
And sensuality. Thanks, Catherine.
Yeah.
The third chakra, which is around the solar plexus, is the seat of power. And you can relate that to the martial arts, Dantian or Hara concept, which is, building power in the belly. So that third chakra, what that relates to is really cleansing and purifying that third chakra so that energy flows through it, and you don't have stuck energy around power and feeling of being in control and feeling important in the world.
And that's why you see people that are in high positions of power with really big bellies, because they're abusing and overexerting their power and dominating others.
That's really interesting. Well, it's also, you could say, like when you look at ancient pictures of the Buddha, right? He had a big belly.
He did.
And a lot of pictures of great of the ancient Zen masters and even martial artists or like samurai, they had a well-developed belly, but it was very different than kind of the Western concept of the tight ripped abs.
And it wasn't with a concave chest and then a belly. That's
right. The chest was strong too.
The chest, the whole body was strong. Body. So the difference in the image I created was usually those people have like concave chest and skinny legs with this big belly. And that's usually a representation.
That's not good. All right. I
have a question for you around stomach aches or headaches and emotions too.
Okay. Well, let me get back to that.
Okay.
The next chakra, real quick, is the heart center or anahata. And so this chakra is going to be associated with feelings of empathy and love, or not feeling loved and not feeling any compassion, right? So being closed off, right? The next one is the throat center. Positively, you feel like you're heard, you've got a voice, what you say matters. And if you don't have a strong throat chakra energy, then you're going to feel like you don't have a voice, like you're not being heard, and what you say doesn't matter. So that's important, really, to pay attention to that. The next chakra is around your third eye, between your pituitary and pineal glands, and this has to do with insight, right? Or whether you're kind of, or whether you lack insight. So we want to have a finely developed chakra there to really open our capacity to perceive more, to see more inwardly, as opposed to being cut off from that and just thinking everything is objective and what we see out in front of us. And the final chakra really is the crown chakra. And this one really is the experience of oneness, of connection with all that is, or that divine energy. So if that's not open, you're not going to feel connected. You're going to feel isolated and separated. And so we want to work on that. At any rate, so those are the subtle body interpretation of emotions. I'm going to get back to your question in a bit. We'll probably need to cut this off in a bit here and move on to part 2. But experience of emotions have a number of different ways we experience them. One is pure physiologically, right? So you can experience some fear-based emotion or anxiety, and you're going to experience it as a increase in your heart rate or some other bodily sensation. I addressed that a little while ago, but it can also be expressive, meaning you don't really have a physiological feeling, but you might just like have a flinch response to something, right? And that normally we think of like a flinch or an expressive response coming from some external stimulus, but you all know it can also happen from some internal sense of something happening, right? It can even come from a daydream or a fantasy that suddenly just kind of like startles you. But emotions can do the same thing. They cause some sort of expressive response. Clearly, as we mentioned, there is also mental activity associated with emotion. So you may have an emotion, and because you haven't been trained to feel or to geolocate it or to even notice it in your body, you may simply notice that you're starting to think about it. In fact, I would suggest that most guys are kind of stuck there in their head. And so, and I certainly was for most of my life, for over 30 years, where if you had said, hey, how are you feeling, Mark? I'd be like, fine. I feel fine. And
feelings inwardly not expressed.
Yeah, thank you. So we know that fine. I used to say fine means fucked up, insecure, neurotic, and extremely emotional, but also as feelings not inwardly expressed. So if you don't have a sense of like, oh, I don't feel anything, well, guess what? That's great. Now you know that you got some work to do, but also you know that you do have mental processing around what those emotions might mean, and that's the interpretations. And I'm here to tell you that most of, if not all of your interpretations are wrong. That's why this is so important to do this work. We could also have behavioral. Now, behavioral adaptations to emotions are things that kind of are developed over time. So with behaviors, you might just, like for instance, you experience some sort of discomfort, which is an emotion. Maybe you haven't identified what it is, but then because of that discomfort, you immediately go to the fridge and grab a Coke or grab a donut or something, because that temporarily relieves the discomfort. Of course, that behavior will lead to other long-term problems of discomfort in the form of disease or being overweight. It can also be phenomenological in the terms of, and this kind of gets to Catherine's question. So you might have an emotional pattern or trigger that phenomenologically shows up as stomach ache or pain in your stomach or a heartache, right? Or a headache even. So you could have those phenomenological things happen to you based upon emotional patterns, and they could repeat over and over and over. You know, and I think that'd be great research into like migraines and whatnot, because yes, there are just physical things that are wrong, maybe something in your environment or some toxins you've taken in, but you can also take in emotional or mental toxins that then express themselves through physiological adaptations, like headaches and heartaches and stuff like that.
My migraines were like that, Mark. I had migraines from the age of 8 until I was 25. And then I realized that they were a stress and fear response.
Right.
And that because I felt out of control and I didn't want to feel the fear, I would get migraines and I would shut down for a couple of days.
Wow.
And the minute once I made the connection emotionally through meditation more than therapy, I've never had a migraine again in the last 20 years.
Isn't that interesting? Thanks for sharing that, because that is so important for people to realize that the whole mind-body somatic connection, that oftentimes you can heal physical problems through emotional development, emotional awareness. And like Catherine said, awareness of the stuck emotion or the blocked emotion or the repressed emotion often is enough. right? Just often the awareness itself, the objectification to be able to it's like take that part out of you and look at it and say, I see you now, and I don't need to repress you. I can experience that energy without the headache, so to speak. That's often enough to just release that.
Winners don't make resolutions. Resolutions break. Instead, winners just start and then maximize on their momentum. And when their goal is health span, being able to live better for longer, there's a few non-negotiables. And one of them is quality. When it comes to supplements geared toward high performers, no one does quality like Momentous does. They invest in NSF certification, meaning each batch is tested for heavy metals, harmful additives, and label claim accuracy. And it's the reason they're trusted by all 32 NFL teams and collegiate sports team dietitians all over the country. Trusting research and their ecosystem of experts over fads means not offering every supplement on the market. Other brands can do that. Momentous believes in nailing the basics with bone-crushing consistency, then curating an intentional routine based on your individual goals. And by basics, I mean protein and creatine, fundamental basics for your supplement routine. Momentous sources CreaPure, the purest form of creatine monohydrate available, and it's an absolute must for both men and women for peak physical and cognitive performance. If you want to learn more, go to livemomentous.com, livemomentous.com. Try it today, 20% off using the code DIVINE, DIVINE. Start living on purpose now. Get your supplements at livemomentous.com. Check out their creatine and their protein, the basic must-haves. 20% off. Use the code DIVINE at livemomentous.com.
Are you tired of dealing with mid-morning energy slumps and coffee jitters, sabotaging your productivity? I know I am. But everything changed when I discovered Nandaka by Peak. Nandaka isn't just a coffee alternative, it's the ultimate morning upgrade. One creamy spice cacao cup unlocks effortless flow state and laser focus. It's packed with prebiotics, probiotics, and functional mushrooms. Nandaka curbs cravings, revs up your metabolism, and melts away your stress. What's their secret? Well, Peak uses only the purest and highest quality ingredients. We're talking about fruiting body mushrooms, no mycelium or grains for maximum potency, plus up to 30% cacao butter ensures optimal nutrient absorption. Since switching to Nandaka, my productivity has skyrocketed, and I don't get the coffee jitters or that mid-morning slump. I'm crushing my goals, and I'm feeling energized all day, and even noticing changes in my body comp. This is truly next-level wellness in every cup. So if you're ready to transform your mornings and make your morning routine supercharged, and this your most productive year ever, then visit peaklife.com/divine for an exclusive 20% off plus a free starter kit. Again, that's peaklife, peakuelife.com/divine, DIVINE. Elevate your morning rituals with Nandaka while supplies last.
The last one is evaluative, but I don't think you say it like that. Evaluative. And so evaluative is like a sensation. Like I guess it's similar to an affect, like I talked about earlier, but you could have a sense of like dread. That would be an evaluative, or brooding, like something bad is going to happen. You know, a lot of times, and Catherine, you just said this the other day, you just have the sense that something bad is going to happen, right?
Yep.
In our culture. That's like an evaluative thing where you're picking up both internal and external signals and a lot of pattern recognition, and it just gives you this sensation that then you put some evaluation on and say, this is not good, right? And I tell you what, this this particular one, evaluative, is very, very close to intuition. So when we get to the intuitive mountain next, when we get to that discussion, there's probably not a ton of difference between an evaluative sensation as an emotion and evaluative sensation as intuition. There are some distinctions, but they're very closely related.
And maybe it's your higher self trying to get your mental, emotional self to be aware. And that's the intuition speaking to the emotion.
Yeah, I think that's highly likely that you have that kind of causal energy that's nudging you, your higher self. It's also likely that, and this is more of a metaphysical discussion, that there are guides, guardians,
absolutely,
non-physical beings who are there to support us. I certainly have experienced that in my life. Some of you listening might think that's ridiculous, and others are like, yeah, I'm totally with you, Mark. But it's certainly my experience that we have non-physical partners, supporters, beings who have our interests at heart. And frankly, there are also very likely that there are non-physical beings who don't have our interests. And we certainly, I've had a lot of discussions with people who are quite certain that they had something like that in their lives and they were able to get rid of it through different experiences and work that they did. So there's a lot to this discussion of emotions. We're just kind of chipping away at the surface of it. A few more comments, and then we'll kind of wrap up here. Emotions can be short and acute, like happen like bam, really quick, and just be like a shock to your system. That's what acute means. And this can be like joy, like a sudden sense of joy when you see a sunset or someone, you see a new baby and the pure, grace of a baby's eyes. Or it can be like the shock of rage, right, that then passes quickly. Or the emotion can be long-term and chronic, very similar to what we talked about when it comes to apathy or some long-term moods that just you can't shake. And grief, obviously, or on the positive side, just a feeling of contentment, right? That's a cultivated feeling of contentment. We're going to talk about that in our next session. How do we develop that? And the last thing I'll say is emotions can be both conscious or unconscious, meaning, okay, so what would be a conscious emotion? Well, if you hate yourself, that's a conscious emotion, meaning like you are consciously aware that you don't like yourself. Like, okay, that's not good. We're going to have to work on that, right? We're going to develop some positive mindset and start to learn to love yourself. But, when you weren't loved as a child, it's not so easy to suddenly love yourself. So it becomes a practice. So that's something you're consciously aware of. Or let's say you're jealous, right? So jealousy, the 7 deadly sins. Let's say you're jealous of another person or you're jealous of someone else's success. Then you're aware of that. That is an emotion that you're consciously aware of. And also you probably have a bodily sensation around. But you can also be quite unaware or unconscious of the emotions. And where I see this a lot is people are unconscious of regrets. And they have to like be pointed out that they're carrying this regret, this deep sense of like loss or coulda, shoulda, woulda about events in the past, but it's kind of bubbling below the surface. They're not really consciously aware of it. And when they do become consciously aware of it, then they can eradicate that regret. Or shame, again, is another one. Shame can be so insidious and deep that it just shows up in behaviors that are either self-destructive or aggrandizing, right? So you either put yourself in a one-down position amongst others where you think you're not good enough or can't compare to them, and you're looking for external validation all the time, or you're in a position of one-upmanship with grandiosity where you think you're better than anyone and you have the more narcissistic behaviors. And I tell you what, from all the narcissist or shame-based activities that I've participated in, or seen others participate in, most are completely unaware, hidden from view, part of that background of obviousness that we go to work on with our emotional mountain work. Okay, I've covered quite a lot of territory to introduce the subject of emotions and emotional mountains. In the next discussion, we're going to get into talking about how do we work on bringing these emotions to the surface, making yourself aware of them. How do we train positive internal dialogue? How do we feed the courage wolf? Those types of things. And what are some common emotional support systems from the realm of psychology and even Eastern, like Buddhist psychology teachings? So stay tuned for that. Emotional Mountain Part 2. Thanks for joining me today on the Mark Divine Show. I hope you enjoy these teaching style solo class. Please let me know if you do, or if you prefer to see other conversations or other topics. Please let us know. You can reach out to me at info@markdivine.com. And yeah, that's it. Do the work. Stay focused. Be positive, and don't shy from that emotional mountain. It's really important. Till next time, it's your host, Mark Divine. Out. Hoo-yah.
Thank you for joining us on the Mark Divine Show. We hope this podcast has enriched your life as well as encouraged you to think from new perspectives and make actionable change. You can find all the resources from this episode on the website markdivine.com, along with the video version on the YouTube channel. Just search Mark Divine. You can also connect with Mark Divine directly on Twitter X, Instagram, Facebook, or you can also reach out if you want to share ideas, bring up topics you'd like to hear Mark discuss, or any guest suggestions via his LinkedIn page, Mark Divine. A big thanks to our amazing team at Jet Studios, bringing this podcast to you every week. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the Divine Inspiration newsletter. You can go to markdivine.com and subscribe there. Check out Mark's new performance-focused supplements at sealfitsupplements.com. If you are a new or regular listener to the Mark Divine Show, we would be so grateful if you could rate and review the show. It helps with visibility, and it also gets us out there to more people that are wanting to be positive change agents in this world. Remember, you have the power to create change you want to see. So let's all strive for a better world as trailblazers and warriors of positive change. Stay inspired, stay curious, and be uncommon. Thank you.